Welcome to the Skill and Ideas Podcast by Izodua Asemota.
Hi, welcome to the Skill and Ideas Podcast. In today's podcast, we're going to be talking about the social ledger. Why relationships are your greatest business and life assets. Ever had one of those days where, say, a meeting gets cancelled and your first instinct was to go and answer 3 more emails or maybe even do more work? Stop right there. Now think of that particular food that you love, and let's say it's banga soup and rice. Now think of the people or the set of friends or that friend who introduced you to that food. Now, imagine calling them. Hey, how have you been? And they say, fine. And you ask, want to go for lunch or maybe even dinner? And they say, sure. Where? And you say, that spot that we ate, that banga soup and rice. And they say, okay. And you say, okay, I'm leaving now. And then you hang up the phone. That's probably like 10, 14 seconds. You see, in the Skill and Ideas podcast, we talk a lot about leaning in to your career. But for 75 years, the Harvard study of adult development has been tracking the lives of hundreds of people, from Harvard graduates to those in Boston's poorest neighborhoods, to find out what actually makes a good life. The clearest message from tens of thousands of pages of data wasn't about wealth or fame or working harder. It's actually this: good relationships keep us happier and healthier. In business, we often treat stress like a badge of honor, but biologically, chronic stress is a system failure. This is where social buffering comes in. It's a phenomenon where your social connections actually block that negative consequences of stressful events. When you're in a high-stake meeting or a high-stake negotiation or facing a launch failure, your body triggers that axis that floods you with cortisol, that stress hormone. But the presence of a trusted partner or a friend, or even just a 14-second phone call, can actually block the activation of that stress response. Your brain is wired for this. Deep connections release dopamine, that feel-good reward chemical, and oxytocin, the love hormone that makes you feel secure and calm. It's not just nice to have friends. It's a biological necessity that keeps your brain from actually burning out. We often fall into the trap of that me-decade mindset, hyper-individualism, where we prioritize our personal grind over the collective. So there was a man in the Harvard study, and we'll call him, say, Sterling. He was a scientist, a veteran, and a positive attitude guy. But when a researcher visited him in his 60s, he noticed a stripe of dust across the passenger seat belt of Sterling's car. No one had sat there in a long time. Sterling was technically married, but they hadn't slept in the same room in years. He imagined his relationships with his kids were thriving, but he rarely saw them. He hadn't spoken to his sister in decades, and he wasn't even sure if she was still alive. Some of you are like this. You don't check up on your friends. You don't check up on family. You don't check up on anybody. You are very comfortable. Loneliness is actually toxic. It's as dangerous to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. In business, it's a silent killer of productivity and a major driver of employee turnover. In the UK alone, it's costing the economy over £2.5 billion a year. Sterling's story is a warning. We cannot scale our ideas if we are living in a social vacuum. And this brings me to a little story, a very personal story. So the last 5, maybe to 6 years of my life has really been busy, doing work and leading one of the largest innovation hubs in Nigeria 2 years ago wasn't a small task. And so at some point I was always tired, overworking myself and, always within the confines of my technical assistants, because I had 5 of them who were working with me. 2 were really close to me. And so one of them, out of that 2, always got to notice when I wasn't feeling so fine. And that thing about us entrepreneurs that we want to break through everything, regardless of whether we're feeling fine or not. And you know how that works. And so one of those days I came to work very sick, was dragging myself. My eyes were down inside and I was running temperature crazy. And my technical assistant, his name is Precious, he came to me and said, at work, they call me Chief. And he says, Chief, you're not feeling so well. I said, don't worry, I'll be fine soon. He came back 5 minutes later. He saw me dragging. He gently came to where I was, covered my laptop, put it in my bag, packed my stuff, and straight to my car. And he came up to tell me, Chief, please go home and rest. And I sluggishly came down, drove home, and tried to rest. On another occasion, I was talking to someone in church. And we have really lovely people in my church. And so one of those days I was talking with one and she saw me talking. She saw me kind of being stressed with my eyes the way I was talking and everything. And after the conversation, she tapped me on the back and said, how are you? Within like 1-2 minutes, tears came rolling down my eyes. And I was like, oh boy, I don't know the last time I was asked that question. Meanwhile, I've been asking everyone, and it was a moment of vulnerability for me. And I said, you know what? I'm not fine. And tears was rolling down my eyes. I said, I'm not fine. I've been stressed. I've been working. I just don't know. I know I need to rest for some time, but I don't know. And then she says, you'll be fine. And that did a lot for me that day. This brings me to the vulnerability hack. So how do we fix the dust on the seatbelt, like in Sterling's car, that no one had sat in the passenger seat for almost 60 years? It starts with a word most entrepreneurs hate, and that's vulnerability. Researcher Brent Brown found that the only separating people who feel a deep sense of love and belonging from those who struggle is a simple belief that they are worthy of love and they accept with their whole heart that they are imperfect. In your business life, this means being authentically real. When there's a bad quarter or a bad sale, The most effective leaders don't hide. They say, "We are sorry. We'll fix this." We often try to numb vulnerability with a couple of beers, a banana nut muffin, donuts, good food, and all that. But you can't selectively numb emotion. When you numb the hard stuff, the fear of a pitch failing or the shame of a mistake, you also numb your creativity, joy, and innovation. This means that to build a business that lasts, you have to be willing to be deeply vulnerably seen. And yes, to how we build our social fitness. Maintaining adult relationships or friendship isn't about grand gestures. It's about maintenance and conscious effort. And here's a list of social fitness checklists you could have. One would be that be easy to let go. If your friends know that you can say, "Gotta go, let's move on," without you getting offended, they are much more likely to pick up the phone and call you. If you're an easy to let go person, you're an easy to pick up person. I know you'd probably want to say, "Why would I let go? What if it is something that is detrimental to your mental health or your friendship?" That I would advise you let go. But in this context, I would say be easy to let go. Not everything is worth fighting over. Number two would be quantity over quality. We wait for that weekend that never happens, or that dinner that may never show up. Recently, I started taking more conscious effort in talking to my friends regularly, calling, taking them out, having one plate of nice stew, or, just having beautiful conversations, even over jokes, very consciously and very often. Another thing would be, which would be number three, would be text when you think of it. You thought of that person. There's no need to wait till later in the day. Send a quick message. Just thought about you. How are you doing? You don't know how far that can go for that person that day. And you probably don't know what they're going through. One, "Hey, how are you?" and just drop all the stress in them. Number four, keep their name safe. Keep your friend's name safe. Be an unfriendly place for gossip about your friends. Don't go saying all the wrong stuff about people, even when you know the story. Doesn't really make sense. And something myself and my friends get to do is that we make sure that we are accountable to each other. And so you could see me waking up the next morning and saying, "Hey, bro, you said you were going to do this and this. Have you done that?" And I wake up the next morning and he says, "Hey, you said you were going to do stuff. Did you do that?" I'm like, "Oh my God, I forgot." And he's like, "How can you forget?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Imagine you telling somebody else you are sorry for your dream because you are now accountable. The last would be put important things on your calendar. If you know you want to be having these conversations, you don't leave them to chance. So these days, the way I plan my to-do list every week, just like I plan, Thursday would be a day of rest. I plan Friday evening from so time to so time. It's going to be chat with my friends. Somewhere in my calendar, every month, there's a date that is fixed that I get to take my friends out on that day. and we just gist and laugh over some drinks. So put stuff in your calendar. It shows that you are actually serious about them. We'll leave you with a thought from Mark Twain about the good life. And he says, I quote, "There isn't time for bickerings, apologies, heart burnings, callings to account. There's only time for loving and but an instant, so to speak, for that." End of quote. The good life isn't at the end of a rainbow of wealth or fame. It's built with good relationships. So go make that 14-second call. Ask that friend how they're doing. Probably if you have been liking someone, maybe it's time to say, hey, do you want to go out with me? I mean, you never can tell. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. See you in the next episode.